welcome to this week's Precision Podcast. And we are moving through menopause. So today I have Bansi Dhamecha, and Bansi is an optometrist. She's the director at Optotor. And I want to say hello and thank you for coming to speak with me today.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's something that's close to my heart. Like I said to you earlier, I'm a lifelong glasses wearer. I got my first pair of glasses when I was 8 years old. So it really is a lifetime. And so now, of course, if that wasn't bad enough, now I get to the menopause and, things start to change.
Yes, of course. The one thing that a lot of people find changes with menopause is the eyes. So you end up, majority of the time, most people will find that their eyes get really dry. They'll complain of scratchy feelings, maybe feeling like something's actually in there, when it's just that the eyes are very, very dry and uncomfortable.
So why is it that happens?
Because of the change in estrogen, there is going to be changes within the ocular structures. Estrogen is a hormone that regulates things within the body, and that actually has an effect on the eye as well. It affects the tear film and the tear layer. But one of the things that can be done with regards to menopause is using HRT. And what HRT does is it supplies estrogen where otherwise there wouldn't have been, or there would have been a lower amount of. And one of the studies that was done shows that a level of HRT actually helps regulate some of the changes that would normally happen in the eye. So changes like cataracts or changes like macular degeneration, those sorts of changes have actually been shown to be reduced with HRT. With dry eye, it can actually help as well, because it regulates the amount of estrogen that's present within the body.
I mean, this is the fascinating thing that I'm finding. The more that I talk with people, the more research that I do, that the far-reaching effects of restoring that estrogen in the body. And so this is new news to me, Bansi, this morning. I had no idea that taking HRT or using estrogen supplementation might go some way to prevent some of those long-term conditions or
So there's been some benefits shown of vascular changes that are reversed, which would have otherwise caused long-term deterioration in vision, as well as people that had, I think, increase in intraocular pressure. Those have also been shown to reduce with or managed better with HRT. But the studies off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to quote what they are, have shown that it is variable. It does change from person to person, but HRT does show to have some homeostatic or balancing benefits within the eye.
That's fascinating. And I think maybe what we could do is, if you could send me those, we could put them in the notes, those studies.
Sure.
Because I think the thing that I'm increasingly becoming aware of is that we have a window of opportunity. And so some studies show that HRT has no benefits, say, for instance. And yet it may be that the population that they studied were older.
And so I believe I believe the study that was that I'm referring to had patients that were looked at when they were up to the age of 60. So they were a lot younger in terms of the comparative studies that were done for slightly older women. And they would have had to have, I think, between 2 or 3 indications of dry eye. And we measure dry eye by looking at how long you can blink and keep your eye open. So that's called tear breakup time. And we're looking at how long the tears can actually stay on your eye and then break away. The other test would be to also just see whether or not there is any symptomatic effects. So if the person was complaining of itchy eyes or dry eyes, or a feeling like there was something there, so a foreign body sensation, those are the things that they would be looking out for to specify that this person has dry eye. And I believe they compared the numbers of women that had dry eye with HRT compared to the number of women that had dry eye without HRT. And I believe those that had no hormone replacement ended up having more dry eye, or more symptoms of dry eye, comparatively.
I mean, this is something that I thus far haven't really experienced for myself, but I know that it can be really quite problematic, and might it be made worse or more problematic if you were a contact lens wearer, for instance? I don't know, but
so the measurement that I mentioned, the tear breakup time, that's normally between 10 to 15 seconds for a normal person that doesn't have any dry eye. For a contact lens wearer, you're already looking at a slightly lower breakup time. So you're already looking at someone that has a reduced amount of tear or tear stability. But when you then add into it someone that's having dry eye problems, that does make wearing contact lenses a lot more uncomfortable. However, the changes that have happened in the last few years in terms of contact lens materials, there is a lot more comfort that's at the focus of the manufacturers in terms of making lenses that are more suitable for those people. One of the disadvantages for a lot of practitioners is that when it comes to fitting multifocal contact lenses, everyone shies away from it. And you see this rapid decline in the number of people that actually wear contact lenses or carry on wearing contact lenses when they reach presbyopia, which is where the focus starts changing between distance and near. So this is where you might want to start wearing multifocal contact lenses. And what ends up happening is that where everyone feels dry and uncomfortable with the added changes that are happening throughout the body, contact lens wear then becomes not only complex with the type of lens, but the comfort of the lens is then compromised, as it were. But there's a lot better materials out there. And if you've never worn lenses, or if you know someone that's going through the same experience, if they do want to try lenses, there's a lot better comfort focused materials out there that are better for dry eye.
Yeah, I think that's true. The technology is advancing apace, isn't it?
Yep.
And
very, very quickly.
Yeah, for me personally, I, I kind of, there was a time when I wanted to wear contact lenses.
Okay.
And I remember when I got married, I got a pair, well, more than one pair, I'm sure. And I went through a period of wearing them, and I'd wear them to go out. But I've got quite a strong astigmatism, which means that I could never, back then, years ago, I could never get them to be comfortable.
Okay.
And so now I'm sure the materials are such that they would be comfortable, but I'm quite happy to hide my wrinkles behind my glasses.
benefit of the glasses. Obviously, you want to show your face, and you've got a beautiful face, so why not show it? So this is what contact lenses are for. Even if you wanted the freedom of wanting to do something where glasses are not very suitable. So say, for example, you did any sports, or like yourself, if you're doing exercises or yoga, then maybe glasses slipping down as you're exercising. Exactly. That's where contact lenses will end up being a lot more useful to you.
Yeah, I must confess that even with the glasses, I find the vision, you talked about and I can't remember the word you used, but how suddenly, all of a sudden, that now I need like 3 layers in my glasses, not just the one that I used to.
Yeah, so that's called presbyopia, where someone loses their ability to be able to change focus as things get closer. So inside the eye, there's a lens, and the lens kind of squashes itself. And as it squashes itself, when we're younger, it brings that focus up close. So you'll be able to read things on your phone or your watch or your tablet. But as we get a little bit older, the lens loses that ability to squash itself. And where it loses that squashability or that flexibility, where it gets a little bit harder you can't focus as close anymore. So you'll find that your arm is just not long enough at one point, which is where something like a varifocal or a multifocal lens would end up being useful.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's interesting. You call it squashability or
Yeah.
flexibility because just about everything gets stiffer, and so now I know that the lens in my eye stiffer as well.
Yes, exactly. And there's basically research that I saw recently. So I don't know too much about it, but there's research that shows that you can prevent or slow down the changes. But I wouldn't be comfortable in quoting exactly the findings of that study. But the changes that were made within the lens, that's something that happens normal and it happens naturally to everyone. This is why you might see people with the little lines on their glasses. Those are bifocals to allow for the difference in focus. But in terms of what people will experience, that reading position where it used to be up close at say 30 centimeters, it just got to 40. And then the next year after you're at 50, and then eventually gets to arms not long enough.
So yeah, so I definitely have the arms not long enough situation going on.
Yeah.
Definitely got that. So the other thing that I find is that driving in the night time is something that is not quite as good as it used to be. My vision. So is what is that happens?
So there's changes that happen with time anyway. So one of the changes that can happen is that your pupil will become smaller with time. So as your pupil gets a little bit smaller, there's less light coming in. If in the nighttime you've got a smaller pupil compared to what you might have had previously, it'll make it a little bit more difficult, because obviously in the bright conditions you'd have a smaller pupil, but in the darker conditions your pupils get bigger or they dilate.
Yeah.
If as we get a little bit older we've got smaller pupils, that can also make it a little bit more difficult to see. But one of the things that you would normally expect in terms of changes in prescription would be that you would expect changes from when you're born. Your eyesight is constantly changing, which is why where you've had your glasses from a young age, you'll have noticed that the number in the glasses keeps on changing.
Yeah, yeah.
And where you get to about mid 40s, you expect that actually if you're believe you're short-sighted, so where you might have found that at certain points you can take your glasses off to be able to see up close, you're finding that actually where I used to be short-sighted, I'm kind of like, am I long-sighted or short-sighted, or what's actually happening? So throughout your life, your vision is constantly changing. Where your prescription might have also changed, that can also impact your nighttime driving.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it's definitely, I think that's explained it, the pupil. And then the other thing is the lights coming towards you are just so blinding. Is that?
Yeah, so what ends up happening is that the light glares, and there's different reasons why that light can glare. And normally it's to do with the optical surfaces. And the first surface that the light will hit will be your glasses. So in your case, you're short-sighted. So when the light hits your glasses lens, it will bounce, a little bit of it will bounce off. So to counteract the bouncing of the light away from your lenses will be an anti-reflective coating. So what that does is it allows more of the light to actually pass through, which will make your vision clearer. So it gives it about 10% better clarity in vision. And then the next optical surface will be your cornea. So as the light hits then the cornea, some of it will again bounce off, or it will scatter based on the tear film and the tear quality. So if you imagine that the tears are really unstable or they're wavy in terms of their equality across the corneal surface, then that means that when light enters into the eye or enters and hits the cornea, then the light will scatter and that will cause glare. And then the next optical surface will be the lens. So where the light hits the lens,
Is this the
if
lens
there
in
are
the
any
eye?
inside the eye, yeah, inside the eye. So if there's any change to that lens in terms of its clarity and its transparency, if light hits that lens and again scatters, then that will also make your vision more glary and uncomfortable.
Mm. And so I suppose that happens whether you wear glasses or not, that, the second.
Yeah, so a lot of people will find that if there is bright lights coming towards them, unless they have no prescription at all, they're going to have some element of glare with those lights coming towards them. And you would find that, so when the lens changes, you find that a lot more. So that would be something like a cataract, which is something that happens as we get older anyway. It's something that majority of people will experience. But a cataract means that the lenses are pacified and it's not completely clear and transparent anymore. So where it's not transparent, it means that when light hits the lens, it splits the light up and it causes glare. It scatters the light even.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a thing. There's no doubt about that. But let's talk about things that happen to eyes for people who don't wear glasses, like me. And I think you did already mention diseases of the eyes. What kind of things might some people have difficulty with then, as with the passage of time?
So one of the more common things in, for example, the UK is macular degeneration. Macular degeneration is specifically associated with age. So it's actually called age-related macular degeneration. And what that is that the back of the eye, which is the retina, that has a buildup of deposits over time. And the eye thinks, well, I can't really do what I'm supposed to be doing. And it creates these new blood vessels that grow through those deposits. And that, because those new blood vessels are weak and they're new, they can break and they can leak. And where they leak, they can lift up the retina. And this is one of the two types of macular degeneration. So you've got wet macular degeneration, which is the one that I've mentioned, but you can also have dry macular degeneration as well. And this is where you have no blood vessels, but you just have all these deposits just sitting there at the back of the eye. And what that means is that it affects the central part of your vision. So the macula is the part that sees all the fine details. And where the macula is then affected, it does mean that there's going to be patients that are probably going to have difficulty even just getting around the house, or being able to sign their checks, or doing reading or any kind of close work tasks that they would have otherwise done. So with macular degeneration, it's actually one of the leading causes of reduction in vision or blinding visions, where you wouldn't necessarily be able to do anything. So with dry AMD, there's no treatment. Whereas with wet AMD, you can get an injection into the eye. So there's an injection that's put in from the white of the eye, and it's an intravitreal injection, which basically means that it's inside the jelly of the eye, the fluid gets put in, and that fluid is what's called an anti-VEGF. And anti-VEGF stands for, basically it's reducing the amount of endothelial growth factors. So what that means is that it stops the new blood vessels growing. So that's one of the treatments for wet AMD, but at the moment there's nothing for dry. So that's one of the things that as a pathology could happen as we get a bit older.
Yeah, and what might you be experiencing? I suppose deterioration in vision, is that how you might experience that?
Yeah, so one of the earlier things that you might experience is that things might look a little bit wavy as opposed to straight. So if you were to look at a door frame, instead of it looking completely straight like you would expect, you might notice that the door frame has waviness to it or curves to it. You might notice distortion in vision, or for example, if you're looking across the road and you think this is someone you recognize, but you can't see their face. So details are lost. And with macular degeneration, because it's the part of your retina that sees all fine details, that part of your eye is not working, which means that if, say, for example, I was looking at your face just now, I might be able to see the hair around your face, but I might not be able to see the details of your eyes, nose, and mouth.
Oh, okay. Oh, that doesn't sound like a very nice thing to have. And did you mention that there are lifestyle factors that contribute to the development of macular degeneration?
Yeah, so with macular degeneration, the strongest environmental factor that can be modified is smoking. Smoking is something that you have the option to stop, whereas getting older, that's not something that you can stop.
Sadly,
As much as we
sadly,
might want
I keep trying to think of a way, but yeah, I haven't come up with it yet.
As much as we try to, it might not happen. So smoking is something that you can control, whereas the other risk factors for macular degeneration would be being female or being Caucasian. So those are factors that you can't change, whereas smoking is something that you can change. Also, having a healthy diet and lifestyle, those are things that you can again change, whereas those other factors like we talked about with age or being female, those are things that you can't. So with diet, you'd be doing things like eating green leafy vegetables. Those sorts of things have the antioxidants that are required to help the removal of those deposits at the back of the eye.
Oh, what are those deposits? Do you know?
So they're called drusen, and they're a buildup of waste material that happen through the normal metabolic processes of the eye. There's a layer at the back of the eye called Bruch's membrane, and it's between the retina and Bruch's membrane that these deposits will then build up. And it's basically the buildup of these deposits will then lift up that macular area.
Okay. Yeah, so it's interesting that nutrition is a feature. It's not necessarily something you would immediately jump to when you're thinking about how to look after your eye health, but it makes perfect sense now that you mention it.
Yeah, the disadvantage of being in a high street practice where you're seeing maybe 21 people in the day, you don't necessarily get the chance to be able to talk about these nutritional benefits or the supplements that a patient might be able to take. So whenever you do get a chance to, or whenever you see a patient that has a problem, it's really important to take the time as a practitioner to be able to explain the nutritional benefits of either supplements or certain foods, or even changes in the diet and lifestyle, going out for more walks and things like that to help the patient.
Yeah, I suppose it's fit and healthy in the broadest sense of the word. Can
Absolutely.
have a bearing on your eye health, which
Yeah.
again it's not something we think about. But it's interesting that you talk about being female as a risk factor.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that comes back to this estrogen piece of the puzzle.
Well, the study that I did refer to earlier
Mm.
actually showed that something like macular degeneration can be controlled when there is a higher amount of estrogen. So the vascular changes that occur because of the reduction in estrogen, those are reversed or actually reduced in patients when they do take HRT. So I think possibly there is a link there, but without looking into that research a bit further, I wouldn't be able to definitely say.
No, and I mean the research. There's a lot, very little female-centric research around in any field of
Yeah,
medicine or science, and so this is still really relatively in its infancy. That women's health as a separate entity is
yeah,
being considered, and so bring it on is what I say to that.
yeah, absolutely. The thing is, we're half of the population.
Population.
So it's important that we know what's happening with our bodies, why things are happening, and what we can do to make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think some simple tips for us to look after our visual health as we move forwards. Do you have some suggestions?
Yeah, so a lot of people nowadays, especially with lockdown, are spending a lot more time on their phones, tablets, laptops. So making sure you take regular breaks from using whatever device it is that you are on. Take 20 minutes, every 20 minutes, look at something 20 meters away for about 20 seconds. So that's the 20-20-20
Oh,
rule that you
you
want
know
to
what?
follow.
I'm going to hold you up there. this sounds too important to skip over in a brief moment. So let's just recap on this, because does this speak to eye strain? Is this is
Yeah,
that
so
yeah?
a lot of people do find that with the use of the VDU, so your computer, your visual display units, you're spending a lot more time focusing on something and you're converging. So you're turning your eyes in for a very long period of time. Our
Okay.
natural eye position is actually straight as opposed to converged and turned in. So ideally, you want to make sure that you look at something a little bit further away that allows the eyes to relax a little bit. But also in terms of, for example, if we were talking about much younger children, they spending a lot more time on their gadgets, they're actually more likely to become more myopic or more short-sighted. So there is research that shows that. Also, if we're looking at the adults that wear glasses when they're on their computers, if we consider something like varifocals or specific computer vision glasses, you need to make sure you have your correct correction to be able to use your computer, because otherwise what ends up happening is, again, you'll end up having eye strain and eye fatigue, because we're not really meant to be focusing at that sort of distance for a long period of time.
In evolutionary terms, we were intended to be looking off into the distance,
Yeah,
like you say, looking away. And so you know, it hasn't occurred to me. I'll tell you about this, because in my career up to date, I've worked predominantly with people and not so much with screens. And so
yeah,
you are constantly varying the distance that you're looking with your
yeah.
eyes. And so over the last few months since I began my online business, I've been spending so much more time in front of a screen, and it was never a thing. And so this is all new news to me. That and you said something about the 2020. What was it?
Yep. So every 20 minutes for
Mm.
20 seconds, look at something that's 20 meters away. So look out the window for a few moments, have a blink, relax your eyes, and try not to be converging or looking at something up close for that whole period of time.
Oh, well, that's really helpful. And I'm for me, that's really helpful. I'm going to do that. And I suppose as a movement specialist, what I would talk about is don't be still for too long. So this,
Absolutely.
you know, it fits together, doesn't it? So every 20 minutes, I like the idea that maybe you just stand up, move away from the computer,
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
go
Get the
to
blood circulating.
yeah, get some blood circulating and look at something else just for a few moments. Well, 20
Absolutely.
seconds, there you go.
Yep. Yep.
And that, if we did that every 20 minutes through our day, I know it's not always practicable, but anyway, it's certainly something worth considering. So thank you for that.
That's all right.
Thank you. And so nutritionally, you mentioned green leafies, and then you talked about supplements, but what might that be?
So specifically for macular degeneration, there was a study that was called the ARID study, which is basically specifically for macular degeneration, and it also looked at diabetic changes as well. But the study showed that there are certain supplements that you can take. You can use zinc with zeaxanthin and lutein. Those are the two nutritional supplements that was used as part of the ARID study. It suggested beta carotene was beneficial.
Oh,
However, the
carrots.
second study showed that actually there is a varying amount of
Oh,
benefit from beta
beta
carotene, because also
carotene.
you have to think about what are the other systemic problems that a patient might have, and how does that actually interact with the medication or the supplement that the
Yeah,
patient is taking.
yeah. Well, this is true. And you know, if you were thinking about supplements, it's always wise to consider maybe speaking to a pharmacist if you're already on medications, because
Absolutely.
it's definitely not my sphere of expertise. But it's interesting to consider, and you made me laugh with the beta carotene, and how, you know, your mother used to tell you that if you eat your carrots, it'll help you to
Yep.
see in the dark.
Absolutely. There is some truth to it. But majority of the time, it's the things that you don't want to eat that will be most beneficial to you. So things like spinach, kale, those are the green leafies that we're talking about that will have the higher amounts of antioxidants that help get rid of these free radicals that change the health of your eye.
So it's the free radicals again. That they're quite problematic, aren't they? They're at the root of quite a lot of things, the free radicals.
A lot of problems, yeah.
So eat a rainbow every day. Well, certainly over the course of a week. Exercise, regular exercise, moderate exercise.
Well, the thing is that with all systemic problems, exercises will help. If we talk about diabetes, actually, that's actually one of those pathologies that can cause retinal problems. And that's something that, again, can be modified and managed by doing things like exercising. And you can control your diabetes by managing your lifestyle. And that's from the things that you eat as well as the exercise that you do.
Yeah. Well, so it's good to know that if you're doing this stuff anyway, that you're helping your eyes as well as everything else. It's really good to know. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome.
Taking time away from supervising your optometry students and giving your online lectures. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. And we'll keep in touch. And I really feel like we could talk about this again.
And anytime you want me back, just let me know, and I'm happy to come on to here again.
Thank you. Thanks so much.